Good morning.
Good morning.
Ah,
Good to see you.
and it's very good to see you too, Dr. Rosensweet. Thank you for being here. I have nice questions for you. Good morning again, and let us begin. Yes?
Let us begin.
Okie dokie. So messages will come up. Question number 1. What can I do to stop my hair from falling out? I do use progesterone cream, and this helps me feel very well, but I don't know what to do about my hair. Can you help me?
I hope so. Is my answer. This is a wonderful question, and it's a very relevant question because many, if not most, not all, you're an example, Carolyn.
Mm.
Your hair is amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of it.
But most women have hair loss starting at midlife. And hair has many moving parts. And one of the principal parts is hormones. Oh, yeah. When you look at an adolescent girl coming a woman, she's got some of the richest, most thickest hair that she'll ever have in her life. And it's the reason because the hormones are coming on so robustly. And the principal one usually involved is estrogen. So it is good that you're taking progesterone, and yet you never want to stop there. And part of the challenge I have in answering that question, and why I said I hope so, is that in assisting any woman with any issues that may be related to menopause, it's always great to have a lot more information.
Yes.
For example, I don't know how old you are. I don't know how tall you are, how much you weigh, how many pregnancies you've had or have not. I don't know when your last period is. Those are kind of critical initial pieces of information that I need to almost advise any woman on any of the questions she may have. But I'm going to go generic with hair. Mm-hmm. So probably as far as hormones go, there's 2 hormones that can matter in a perimenopausal or menopausal age woman. And one of them is estrogen. And we can find out whether you're getting low on estrogen. But if you're midlife, you are. It doesn't matter if you're still having periods. You're getting low on estrogen. And the other one is thyroid. So thyroid can have a lot to do with hair loss. And I love to catch that one early. I like to, catch all of them early.
Of course.
So as far as hormones go, I look first at estrogen and thyroid. And then testosterone can play into hair. And so we always evaluate that. But let me look at it from a totally different perspective. Hair loss is your entry into, God, what's going on here? And here's the answer to what's going on here. It's the same old thing. Find a healthcare provider that cares about and even specializes in menopause, and really receive their contribution, which is so important because there are so many moving parts to getting hair loss, hormones correctly. Well, someone who's devoting their career to it, it's not a big deal for us. I mean,
and it's wonderful to work as a team.
Absolutely. What you know and how you proceed, and doing it together is really important, but you want to know someone who has the expertise to be able to assess that hair loss and really assess you in hormones and address them. Hair has other moving parts. hair is really made out of protein and minerals, and it's a very actively, as we all know, growing, replacing thing. And it's common around midlife for people to have our digestion diminish, or have
Learning about that.
a diet that doesn't have adequate protein and minerals in it.
Right.
And to cut to the chase, I'd suggest that you go to a website called iwonderdoctor.com. iwonderdoctor.com. We have a lot on digestion and assimilation there because it's such a relevant issue for all of us in midlife. And to be able to improve that digestion and assimilation really matters, so that you're actually getting the protein and minerals that you're eating actually into your body. Oh, let me back up a bit. That you're eating. Well, to cut to the chase, if hair is a issue for you and you don't know exactly what details matter, it's time to become 100% organic, or as close to it as you possibly can. Because, for example, studies have been done in going to the shelves of a common grocery store that's selling non-organic food, and also going to the shelves of a grocery store or a health food store that is selling only organic food, and doing food analyses on these. Rutgers Universities did it. And what they found was, even though the foods look alike, like a piece of broccoli from both places sort of look alike, the mineral content of the non-organic food was way low, which makes sense because agribusiness has really done some funky agricultural things, and most soils are depleted, and they may replenish the nitrogen in these fertilizers, but they're not necessarily replenishing the minerals, although they are in some companies. So there's go organic and go whole foods.
You
got
bet.
a shot of actually eating what hair is made out of, and you need adequate protein. So those of you who are vegans, sometimes this needs to be revisited. Vegan is not the remedy for all human beings. I was a vegan for 17 years until I developed these profound protein cravings and oscillated into my optimal diet. Some people, the vegan is the optimal diet. Some people, carnivorous, primarily carnivorous or omnivorous, is the optimal diet. There is no one prescribed diet for the whole human race, and our genetics play heavily into this. I know I'm going deep into the weeds here, but what do you need? You need what hair's made out of. That means you got to be eating it, and you got to be digesting and assimilating it. So as far as digestion goes, so many of us, we need to chew. It's the most powerful digestive gift we can give to ourselves, is chewing our food, as the macrobiotics say, all the way down to where it's liquid. That's such a powerful aid to digestion. And then many of us will need to supplement digestive enzymes and even betaine hydrochloride or hydrochloric acid.
Yes.
So for hair growth, you need to be getting what's hair is made out of, protein and minerals. You got to go organic, and you got to digest to get it. And then the hormones play a super role.
Oh, yeah.
So in order to deal with hormones, this is not something you want to do as an amateur or with someone who hasn't taken this on as an expertise. You want to get these ones dialed in right. And hair loss, we want to get at it as early as we can, which means your job is the same job I've said over and over again. Find an expert. Come to us, the Menopause Method. We are experts at this. And the world of menopause is not loaded with experts. It's for a lot of reasons, the whole treating women in menopause has been stunted severely by the Women's Health Initiative in 2002, which scared women away from hormones inappropriately and scared practitioners, providers, physicians, nurse practitioners away from hormones. So this is a virgin field, so to speak. expertise goes. And one of the reasons we do this Facebook Live is to help you connect with the menopause method.
Absolutely.
That's what we are providing. That's all we do is treat women in menopause with bioidentical hormones. And we have a practicum program, which is like a residency program for our healthcare providers. I mentor them personally. We want to turn them into experts. They want to become experts and specialists in this. So may that be the motivation to get it right out of the gate. You can go shopping for a lot of different providers, but I'd say hair loss, well, I say every woman in menopause, get it right out of the gate. So your main job, download our book if you want to learn a lot about it, and you'll become an excellent partner in it. Carolyn's made it available on this Facebook
Live.
Facebook Lives and Facebook social medias. And also, your main job, seek out and find someone who's a specialist in this and they really know what they're doing.
Dr. R, can I ask you to move a little bit to your, I think, left? No, the other way. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
My other left, yes.
That other left, yeah. That one. Little left to center. Kathy Doyle Marks said good morning, and she just said, I'm joining the team. Yay. Yay, Menopause Method team. We are all about that. I did not give you a proper introduction this morning. I will next time because I think it's important. We have many new ladies here. And just very quickly, our dear Dr. Rosensweet is a doctor of 50 years, holistic doctor, 25 years treating women in menopause, and has created this amazing thing called the Menopause Method. And this is where hormones are delivered via organic oils, and they come in a bottle and you shake it, and they're wonderful. So book Happy Healthy Hormones. You can download it free, top of the page. Happy to do that. You can buy it at that whatever in the sky place if you want. But free always works really well. So please go to town on that one. Okay. Thank you for answering that. I have not had the hair problem other than when I had chemo, and that was really not fun. And I do understand what it feels like to lose hair. It's awful. The second question came in that interested me, and the question is, which estrogen stimulates breast glandular tissue?
This question really reveals how much women are learning about some details.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to back us up to the basics. Hormones work biologically by linking into receptor sites. So you have the hormone, and then in the cells, like the breast glandular cells, for example, they have receptor sites. Bones have estrogen receptor sites, brain, arteries, they're ubiquitous. But here we're talking about the breast glandular cells, the cells that ultimately make it possible to do breastfeeding for a woman. Breast glandular cells, they're the ones who create the milk. So they can be stimulated. And they can be stimulated to such an extent that they can they can proliferate and become possible for a woman to breastfeed. And any woman who's been pregnant knows that her breasts get much larger and fuller. And a lot of that is increased number of breast glandular cells. Those breast glandular cells can be encouraged, stimulated to proliferate and become more of them. And also, extraordinarily, every single menstrual cycle in a young woman includes many different changes in her body. The endometrium, the lining to the uterus, gets prepared to receive a possible fertilized egg. Also, the breasts begin preparing for breastfeeding every single cycle. So every single cycle, there is breast glandular cell proliferation in a young woman. In other words, she's preparing for lactation right in the beginning there. And young women also are most young women are aware that their breasts get fuller every cycle.
Yes.
And then if they do not get pregnant, those breasts get smaller every cycle. They get unfuller. In fact, the new breast glandular cells that have been made through proliferation, they disappear through an interesting named process called apoptosis.
Apoptosis.
And now I'm getting down to answering the question. How does that initial stimulation of breast glandular cell proliferation occur? And how does, when a woman doesn't get pregnant, does the deproliferation occur? Well, it's under the influence of estrogen, as the questioner suspected. And the proliferation phase is under the influence of a receptor site called estrogen receptor site alpha. And when alpha gets stimulated, there's breast glandular cell proliferation. But if there's no implantation, there's a different receptor site that gets stimulated called estrogen receptor site beta. That's just named that way. And when beta, estrogen receptor site beta, or ER beta, is stimulated, you get deproliferation. The primary estrogen, there is no hormone called estrogen, actually.
Right.
Estrogen is the name of a hormone family in which there are several estrogens. There's estrogen nicknamed E1, or it's known as estrone. There's an estrogen known as E2. That's estradiol. In fact, that's the most potent. Estradiol is the most potent estrogen that is produced in the ovary. And there's an estrogen known as E3, estriol. And it's nowhere near as potent. In fact, it's 1/8 as potent as estradiol, but it's more prevalent than the sum of estrone and estradiol.
Yes.
And the primary stimulant of estrogen receptor site beta, the deproliferative phase, is estriol. So the primary stimulant of breast glandular cell proliferation is estradiol. The primary stimulant of deproliferation or apoptosis is estriol, which has led Dr. Jonathan Wright, for example, in the early 1980s to propose that why don't we copy nature? And instead of just giving women estradiol who are in menopause, why don't we give them what nature does? And nature has estriol more prevalent than the sum of estrone and estradiol. So Dr. Wright changed the trend of treating women with horse urine-derived estrogens, Premarin, or pure estradiol by suggesting that we treat women with both estriol and estradiol. He didn't really have access to the estrogen receptor site research. That didn't come in until the 1990s. We didn't even know they were there. But what Dr. Wright did have access to is some research done by a Dr. Henry Lemon, a medical doctor who was an oncologist at the University of Nebraska and had a special interest in breast cancer. And Dr. Lemon did 24-hour urine hormone analysis on young, healthy women and also on women who had breast cancer. And what Dr. Lemon wrote and published in several different papers was the women who had breast cancer had much less estriol. And Dr. Lemon proposed that estriol was really important protection against
Interesting. Wow.
It was and this reference is in, you can go to the original reference by looking up the bibliography or the references in Happy Healthy Hormones, the book that you can download. And Dr. Lemon even came up with some numbers. He said that young women who were healthy had 1.3 times as much estradiol as they had the sum of estrone and estradiol. We've named the sum of estrone and estradiol as the total potent estrogens. So Dr. Lemon, to translate into his research, we'd say that estradiol is 1.3 times as prevalent in the urine of 24-hour urines of young healthy women as the total potent estrogens. 1.3 times as much estradiol as there is the sum of estrone and estradiol. And Dr. Wright proposed, even before he knew anything about the receptor sites, he was following Dr. Lemon's lead. He proposed that we treat women not with estradiol alone, or we treat them with Biest, he named it, which has estriol in it and estradiol. And to get those numbers to replicate something like a young woman, to copy nature, which was also coined by Dr. Wright, we start out with a Biest formulation that's 4 times as much estriol in it as estradiol. And eventually we confirm that there's the proper ratio of estriol to estradiol on 24-hour urine hormone analysis. But we start out, and I'd say 85% of the women we wind up treating, they're on 4 times as much estriol in that Biest formulation as they are estradiol. Yes. Some women, that we change that ratio once we look at 24-hour urine hormone tests. But yeah, we want to stimulate estrogen receptor site beta. We don't want proliferation of breast glandular tissue in a woman in midlife. No way, we don't need it. We can get the full job that most women, not 100% of the women, need by having less estrogens than a young woman has. We don't need her to menstruate. There are rare exceptions. And we want to have a lot of estriol because we don't want breast glandular cell proliferation.
Right. Right.
Okay. Once again, a question that calls for a lot of technical detail. I apologize if it feels like it's too much in the weeds, but you asked the question. So.
That is true. And you answered them, and well, as always. So a question did come up in regards to that question. Can you tell me, when using estriol down below, does it circulate through your body or just stay down there?
By down below, I'm assuming that you're talking somewhere around the vagina or
yeah, I would think,
or perineum or something. Let me say one other thing before. There was a time in Japan and Europe where the principal hormone that was being prescribed was estriol. Now, we found that that's not optimal. It doesn't ultimately result in a configuration of the estrogens and the metabolites that copies nature, so we don't prescribe only estriol. But estriol is also used popularly to help the vagina heal. And so there's estriol creams and gels, not a fan of those. Really want the organic oils, but the creams and gels that are inserted intravaginally, as you can do the oils. And I think that's what you're referring to, estriol treatment of the vagina, which is a great idea. But it's not optimal for treating all of menopause. No way. It's good for treating the vagina initially, but you don't need to when you're treating a woman. Let's say she's applying Biest to her forearms. Eventually, she's going to get enough estradiol and estriol in her body, and that'll heal the vagina. But occasionally, we do assist a woman who's got very significant vaginal atrophy by estriol alone in the vagina.
Right. So now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now let me answer the question. Let me get to the question. Yes, if you're applying estriol to your vagina, it gets absorbed into your body. And yes, the local application is directly helpful for the vagina, but anything you apply in your vagina pretty much makes it into your body. In fact, if you apply it to your skin, it makes it into your body. Absorption via the skin, via the mucous membranes, including the vagina, is very excellent for these hormones, depending on how they're delivered.
Yeah, women do ask this quite often in regards to the vaginal creams that they are given. And I don't know exactly why they don't tell me why they're given them, but they do want to know the answer to that. I think maybe
they definitely get absorbed into your body, and that's the good news. However, there's no need to continue to take vaginal hormones because they also absorb beautifully through the skin. But like I mentioned, sometimes when a woman has very significant vaginal atrophy, we'll like to treat her for a couple months, not only to her skin, so she gets it into her body, but also intravaginally. We'll do it intravaginally for a while because it'll help give that vagina a better opportunity to heal. Now, there is a limitation of vaginally administered estrogens. I'm going to give you a very strong opinion that the way to test a woman's hormones is via 24-hour urine hormone collection. And if a woman is taking hormones in her vagina, we won't get accurate results because the bladder empties into the vagina via the urethra. And if a woman is taking vaginal anything, it's going to show up in the urine as a contaminant. So we get skewed results. Also, women are having intercourse. It's not a good idea to give men extra estrogen.
Right.
Rarely, a man does need some estrogen. They don't have enough. But that's not usually the case in midlife. And you don't want to be giving your partner estrogen that you're having intercourse with.
Right.
So that's the second reason to not apply these things intravaginally.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Question number 3. A bit of a long one. Wanting to know, does anyone have low morning cortisol? And how can I raise it? Will HRT-CBHRT help this? I'm having blood work done today, but cortisol is not included in that blood work. I do all the things as I go to bed early, wake same time daily, no alcohol, sugar, gluten-free, natural sunlight, daily healthy diet. I walk daily, doing all this 2 years, but really struggle in the AM. And sometimes all day, I feel like my brain is not working. I have low blood pressure too. My doc does not find this a concern. And I thank you for any advice that you could give.
There's about 3 questions in there.
Maybe 4.
Maybe 4. And they are excellent.
Yes, they are.
One of the things that has widespread distribution to the public is the subject of adrenal fatigue. When I say public, I mean the health concerned public. And in my opinion, it's become a far overused term. And because, for one thing, a lot of things are called adrenal fatigue that aren't really adrenal fatigue. And that can throw you down the wrong trail and give you concerns like this woman has. Now, all of us have glandular fatigue. Anyone who's been on the planet 40 or 50 years has strained, let's say overstrained, placed too high of a demand on our fight or flight biology. And the remedy is acquiring the skills to deal well with life stresses, because life stresses are very important. We're not here to eliminate life stresses. We're just here to increase our abilities and skills to deal very elegantly with life stresses. In other words, don't get bent out of shape too many times, or you're going to trigger the saber-toothed tiger fight or flight response. At the vanguard of the fight or flight response is we raise our adrenal-based adrenaline and cortisol. They're great. You need to fight a saber-toothed tiger. You want a lot of adrenaline and a lot of cortisol. Or the flip side of that is if you keep triggering the biology of the stress response over decades, as most of us have done, we do strain those adrenals. So there is a certain way that adrenal tiredness or adrenal fatigue is relevant to almost every human being that's past the age of 2. A little bit of an exaggeration.
I thought it was 6 months.
How about past the age of 20 or past the age of 30 or past the age of 40? But here's an interesting thing. The cortisol that you're talking about is one of the most highest prioritized hormones in our whole body. That means that the ability for your adrenal glands to produce cortisol is going to be favored throughout your life at the cost of producing other hormones that are made out of the same raw materials. And so you can, when I do 24-hour urine hormone tests as we do on 100% of our women, not in the beginning, we don't test in the beginning. There's a lot of reasons for that. But when we dial in what seem to be clinically optimal dosages of the ovarian hormones, we're doing 24-hour urine hormone tests. And this is where I learned that cortisol being low is far exaggerated out there. Because I'd say 10% of the women that we test in their 40s and 50s who are in menopause, they have cortisol that is concernably low. But we only treat 1% of them. And I'll get to that in the beginning. So it's not as common as you think. That cortisol is going to be preserved over every other hormone. All these steroid hormones are made out of the same raw materials. And you produce estrogen, you produce testosterone, you produce progesterone out of the same raw materials that cortisol is made out of. But that cortisol is going to be favored. So you're going to preserve your cortisol production long after you've depleted your androgens, that would be your testosterone and DHEA, and your estrogens and your progesterone. That cortisol is going to be preserved. Which leads to the subject of testing. Like, even if your doctor does the most common screening test for cortisol, which is a blood cortisol first thing in the morning, that can be deceptively normal.
Mm-hmm. Deceptively
Normal, because you might have enough to pump out enough cortisol in the morning, but you may not be pumping out enough in the afternoon or the evening. Well, we always see that on the 24-hour urine hormone test, and even salivary testing, as much as I'm not an advocate of it at all, it can reveal, okay, a decent morning cortisol, but not later.
Wow.
So what I'd like you to do is consider the possibility that you do not necessarily have low morning cortisol. And when you get in a proper menopause program, you're going to get tested, and we're going to find out if that's true. And we're going to find out about it. I'll get into that in just a bit. And interestingly enough, in a menopausal woman, her estrogen will be low. Her testosterone is going to be low sooner or later. Her progesterone is going to be low. And even if her cortisol is a little low, or even moderately low, if we replenish the estrogens and the progesterone and the testosterone, the cortisol is going to recover, because now it's going to be able to suck up 100% of what cortisol is made out of, the raw materials. So the remedy for low cortisol, if it exists, actually, is just replenish the estrogen, testosterone, and the progesterone, and you'll watch the cortisol recover on its own. Any provider who's doing 24-hour urine hormone tests will observe this happening. So even if a woman, once you test her 3 months into your replenishing program, even if you see low cortisol, as you replenish the androgens and the estrogens and the progesterone, you're going to see the recovery of cortisol. So it's very rare that we'll treat with cortisol because we know that replenishment is going to result in the recovery of cortisol. Now, you mentioned, the questioner mentioned that she's tired in the morning.
And sometimes all day too.
Yes, and she led with the morning.
Yes.
Now, if that's related to hormones, it can be related to all the hormones, but the one that I think of first is low thyroid. Because functional hypothyroidism, that means we don't have as much thyroid hormone as we had when we were younger, because we've sort of worn down that system as well. So we may have thyroid tests that show that we're within the reference range, therefore not abnormal, but very few testing that's being done beyond the screening test level. In the menopause method, we test 4 thyroid hormones right out of the gate, if not 6. And the 4 we test, you might write these down, folks, because you don't know about your thyroid as far as testing goes, unless you're testing a free T3, a free T4, a TSH, and a reverse T3. Mostly screening tests are just doing the TSH or maybe a free T4, or maybe the old thyroid panels were doing totals, and there's reasons why we don't do that. So I listed the things that really matter in thyroid, but my God, you can pick up on hypothyroidism just by doing a real thorough medical history, as we do with every woman that we consult with. So when you're tired in the morning, that's usually as far as hormones go, that's usually more related to thyroid, because what happens is once your circulation starts going, because you're moving around, you'll start getting more energized as the day goes on, and that low waking up tired is very often a symptom of functional hypothyroidism, if not frank hypothyroidism.
Right.
So I'm trying to blur the boundaries around the whole subject of cortisol, because 1% of the or less of all the women I've seen for 25 years treating them with menopause, although occasionally we see low cortisol in the first 3 months, and it's metabolites, and that's the proper way to evaluate it, 24-hour urine hormone testing, their corticosteroids are going to recover simply by replenishing the other steroid hormones. And sometimes in order to get some of that cortisol replenishing, you need to address the thyroid as well. It's challenging if your body doesn't have enough thyroid, it's going to draw on other hormones, and it will draw on the corticosteroids. So you replenish the hypothyroidism and the cortisol is going to recover, and vice versa. Sometimes you got hypothyroidism and you got low cortisol. You replenish the corticosteroids, usually by replenishing the ovarian hormones. The corticosteroids recover, and then that gives the thyroid a better chance to recover, because the knee bone's connected to the thigh bone, and in the world of hormones, they're all connected.
I was just going to say everything's interconnected. Yeah.
So you want to address the whole thing by an expert thoroughly, and especially when you're messing with cortisol. So like I say, there are an occasional woman that their cortisol is really low, and we're not going to make headway until we actually treat with cortisol, but these are very rare. So it's an overused subject, adrenal fatigue, even though anyone who's 50 years old has got some tiredness of the adrenal, because we've overdriven our precious glands. Yes, there's adrenal fatigue. And so at any rate, there's a lot of words about a long question. There was a lot of interesting things in that question. So that's why the answer.
Again, back to the book, Happy, Healthy Hormones. The information in that book is so fabulous. Really, it is. And I always allude to the pages 326 and 327. You see your symptom alleviation, what's up, what's down, what's this, what's that, and so on. Very, very well written book. And
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
love that you mentioned those summary pages. It's a great place to start in the book.
Sure.
And look at this question from Antoinette. Since we're on the subject,
Yes,
I think why don't you read that one, Carolyn, because that's
will do. And welcome Antoinette and Anne and Charlotte and Joanne and the other women who are or Joe who are down. Antoinette is asking if you already have thyroid nodules and possible low thyroid, will the addition of estrogen push the thyroid hormone lower and cause more problems?
there's two parts to that question. When I actually hear about actual thyroid nodules, I like to refer a woman to an endocrinologist.
Yes.
Most of the time, those thyroid nodules are totally benign and they're just the thyroid compensating for strain on the thyroid. So it's another way for the thyroid to produce more hormones. Most of those nodules are totally benign, but occasionally one isn't. Occasionally there's thyroid cancer, and the endocrinologists know how to address that properly, how to test for it. And God, thyroid cancer is so easy to treat. It's one of the simplest cancers to treat that
Oh,
is.
that's
And
a beautiful
so
thing to hear.
I care. Yes, it is. You got as much success in treating thyroid cancer as you got any cancer that exists. And not only that, because it's on the surface, um, you can learn about it early through nodules. So I don't want to scare you about your thyroid nodules.
No.
Most of them are absolutely benign. They're no problem whatsoever. But I do want to say that this is an area that we care about, and we think that you ought to go to an endocrinologist. They know how to test you for this. And then, are estrogen and thyroid related? Yes, they are. All these things are interrelated. And it is common for a woman who is hypothyroid and is being treated with thyroid, and she goes into menopause, and we start giving her estrogen, thyroid hormone levels diminish. And we have to reevaluate the thyroid. And this is important. And there's a couple mechanisms by which that can happen. I don't know if I need to enumerate those mechanisms, but one of them can relate to sex hormone binding globulin. But the part that I want the audience to know is that if you are hypothyroid and you go into menopause, and prior to going into menopause, you've been on successful thyroid hormone replenishing, and we start giving you estrogen and androgens, about 3 months in or somewhere along the line, we want to recheck those blood thyroid levels. Again, there's 4 things we want: TSH plus free T3, not total T3, plus free T4, not total T4, and reverse T3. We want those 4 numbers. So if you are hypothyroid and you go into menopause and you start getting treated with estrogen, somewhere along the line, we want to reevaluate your thyroid. Well, this can get missed if you're on decent thyroid hormone treatment and you went into menopause and you got good menopausal treatment and you feel good and you feel great and you're functioning really well. It's not that important that we go in and evaluate your thyroid again, although if you're on thyroid hormone, we ought to be doing that annually anyway. It's the women that you go into menopause and you're doing a lot better, but things aren't 100% right. Well, someone who's really trained is going to spot that you are hypothyroid. They're going to know that they treated you with estrogens, and they're going to know, okay, time to reevaluate the thyroid. So I don't want anyone to worry about this. However, if you're going into menopause treatment and you feel better, but you don't feel real better, I'm always looking for this statement from women: oh my God, I feel myself again.
Mm.
They're not, no one's expecting that we get to feel 20 years old again. or you shouldn't. But you ought to feel like yourself again. You ought to be really satisfied. That's the
Yeah.
thing being treated in menopause. You ought to feel like this is good enough and this is great and I celebrate this. And if you're not, we want to inspect why. So Antoinette, you're asking a relevant question when someone has hypothyroidism. If you're not feeling really good and you're being treated for menopause and thyroid, we want to inspect what's going on there. So we're going to want to evaluate that thyroid again. And we're going to want to evaluate by 24-hour urine hormone testing what your ovarian hormone situation is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And something I failed to say earlier is that the 24-hour urine hormone test gives one of the most phenomenal looks at the whole subject of cortisol, corticosteroids. It's looking at the adrenal cortex because the adrenal cortex is producing cortisol. And we get to look at cortisol, cortisone, and 3 principal metabolites. So we get a very thorough look on the 24-hour urine hormone test, not only of the estrogens, progesterone, and the androgens, which is testosterone and DHEA and their metabolites. We get to look royally at those corticosteroids. So I've learned a lot about corticosteroids. And when I'm saying it's pretty rare that you run into a situation of low corticosteroids where you actually need to treat with Cortef. It happens. And when it happens, it's important. But 98% of the time, you may think you have adrenal fatigue. What are we talking about adrenal fatigue? Low corticosteroids. Adrenal also produces androgens, testosterone and DHEA, but we're taking care of those. And there's another part of the adrenal that produces adrenaline, adrenal medulla. That can fatigue too. But that's a different story for a different time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yes, if you notice this, that when you're lying down or when you get out of bed to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and you get lightheaded, and you never used to do that, but now when you get out of bed and you get up fast from reclining to upright fast, and you get lightheaded, you do have a version of adrenal fatigue, most likely. And you want those adrenal glands to recover. So you got 2 main things to do. You got to take care of the causes. Why did the adrenal gland get tired in the first place? Well, you got overstressed and you didn't have good stress responsive techniques.
Yeah, recovery.
And then also, often that adrenal fatigue is taking place in the context of tired thyroids or low estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So you can easily replenish that and you don't take adrenaline. Yes, there are supplements that can be converted into adrenaline, but the main approach to getting those adrenals to recover is take care of all the hormones that is easy to treat with, improve your lifestyle so you got better stress tools, that adrenal gland will recover. And how will you tell? You won't have orthostatic hypotension, which is...
I was just going to say orthostatic. Yeah, absolutely, because it is an orthostasis, yeah? The up and down and yeah.
Yeah, when you move, we're designed that when you're lying down and then you stand up and the gravity's pulling blood to the feet, that doesn't happen, doesn't pull it away from the head, that we've got a rapid response team led by the adrenal glands and adrenaline that keeps the blood flowing up to the brain so you don't get lightheaded and you don't faint. So we want, as part of your measure of recovery, that orthostatic hypotension goes away and you stand up.
Absolutely. Oh my God, yes. We have such good questions, and here we are at 7:55. It's the craziest thing. I'll ask this. Yeah, I need to ask this quickly of you, please, because the question came in, and I'm gonna I don't have it written down, but the woman asked, does Dr. Rosensweet have any time to discuss with us how it is that we can help men in andropause? And if not, where do we go?
Well, there are a lot of physicians and nurse practitioners and prescribing compounding pharmacists and PAs that are treating men in andropause. A lot of them. In fact, treating men is almost as popular as it is treating women. So I would go to different websites and one of them is called A4M, and type in your zip code and you'll look up a bunch of doctors and you'll see which ones are offering treatment for men. Or AMMG, same thing. Or ACAM, ACAM, or even best of all, IFM, Institute of Functional Medicine. And you're going to see you'll type in your zip code, you're going to get a list of doctors. They will tell what it is they're specializing in, andropause. And Nelson Virgo.
Oh, the best.
He's an amazing guy. And he's got a website. And geez, Carolyn, do you know what that is?
It is. It's the Women's Health and HRT group.
Now that's his women's group, but what's his men's group?
It's on there. It's like Excel Mail, I believe. I don't know the exact name of it.
Virgo, and let me see if I can get that information.
Thank you. But yeah, he's out there on the group.
He is so knowledgeable about this.
Oh,
and then what we're doing now is we're in the process of developing a training program for all of our menopause method providers to treat men. So we're around the block, but we're not ready to launch. We are treating some men, including myself. And we've got some of our experts. In fact, next Thursday,
yes,
we're going to have Jim Hertzer here. I made a mistake and announced it for this Thursday, but and Jim Hertzer is an expert on males, and he's one of the ones taking the lead in developing our training of our providers how to treat men.
Well, yeah, I will certainly put that out there on the ins and outs of Menopause Group for sure, so that women will know. I think it's nice that men are getting their due. You know.
I want to see if I can find Nelson's. Because boy, does he have a lot to say about. Yeah.
It's the Women's Health and HRT group, and if you go on it, you'll see he writes in, or you can even just write to him personally. You PM him and ask him the name of the men's group. It's Excel Mail.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe. And he's a nice guy and very knowledgeable.
So I'm going to look that up. XL is in
EXCELMALE. Yeah. God.
Oh yeah.
Did you see it?
That's correct. Why don't you say that again, because that's it.
Yeah, it's the whole thing, the women's HRT.
No, just say the XL male, EXCEL male.
Yeah, EXCELMALE, one word. And that is all about men and testosterone and andropause. And he is bright and he is nice. And he's had this group up for a long time. A lot of us admins bond, and he's one of them. Very, very nice man. And yeah, anybody can go there. And I'm sure, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but kind of sure that he would be happy to help you for sure. You did an interview with him, Dr. R.
I know, he interviewed me, and now I just made myself a note to interview him on this Facebook Live. So, Carolyn, it's time for me to say hasta la vista.
Okay, are you going to stand for a sec? Ladies, thank you so much for being here, really. And I will get a screenshot of these questions, and we will get to them because we have Tuesday, yeah? And then it'll be Thursday for Jim Hertzer, yeah?
Yep.
So for everybody, many, many blessings. Have a really great weekend, and we will talk to you on Tuesday. Dr. Rosensweet, thank you so much.
Bye-bye, Carolyn. Bye-bye, everybody. See you next time.